Imagine a future where healing, say, a really bad broken bone or even a nasty bone infection, isn't just about, slapping a cast on it and hoping for the best. Imagine actively rebuilding the bone right from the inside out.
Hmm.
And what if you could do that with a kind of smart material, one that not only acts as a scaffold for a new bone, but also fights off bacteria at the same time?
Sounds like something from Star Trek, almost.
It really does. But this is actually becoming reality right now in orthopedics.
It is indeed.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Bonesupport Holding AB. They're a fascinating Swedish orthobiologics company, and they seem to be right at the forefront, really shaking things up in bone graft substitutes.
Yeah, they are.
We'll be getting into their proprietary CERAMENT technology. It's this platform that's, it's designed not just to fill gaps in bones, but to actively help the healing process. And sometimes, critically, delivering antibiotics exactly where they're needed.
Which is a huge deal in many cases. So our mission today really is to unpack this company for you. It's complex, it's medical technology, but we want to translate the intricate science, their business strategy, their financial journey.
Yeah, break it down.
Break it down into clear insights. We'll look at how they managed to get through these really tough regulatory hoops.
Right.
Actually help change the rules in some ways. And how they've carved out this important space for themselves against, let's face it, some massive orthopedic companies.
The giants, yeah.
Ultimately, we want you to understand how they've positioned themselves at what looks like a really significant growth point in this whole global orthobiologics market.
And just so you know where we're coming from, all our insights today, they're drawn from some pretty comprehensive environment research analysis. So it gives us this unique kind of behind-the-scenes look, really, into what drives the company, the market dynamics, the opportunities ahead.
It's like having that backstage pass.
Yeah, exactly. A backstage pass to understand a company that's making, serious waves in a critical medical field. It's transforming how patients are treated, challenging old ways of thinking. So let's get started.
Okay.
Let's start right at the beginning. Bonesupport's origins. So it's a Swedish company, right? Founded way back in 1999.
That's right, Lund, Sweden.
And they're listed publicly on NASDAQ Stockholm, ticker BONEX.ST, if you're interested. Now, what's interesting is while their innovation hub, the R&D, is still firmly there in Lund, they've set up this kind of dual headquarters. They have a big U.S. commercial focus running out of Boston.
Right, Boston, Massachusetts. That's key for the North American market.
And that really seems to be the story here, this significant shift. Even though they started in Europe, their strategy, their operations, their money, it's all overwhelmingly pointed towards North America now.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a small tweak. It feels like a really deliberate, defining pivot for them. And that pivot has, massively shaped where they are today.
So that pivot makes sense when you look at their core innovation, right? The CERAMENT technology.
Exactly. So what is CERAMENT? At its heart, it's an injectable bioceramic bone graft substitute.
Okay. Injectable. That sounds modern.
It is. And that word's important. It immediately points to, less invasive surgery, which is a huge plus.
That's right.
But the real magic, the kind of aha moment in the design, is its unique biphasic composition.
Biphasic, meaning two parts.
Two parts, yeah. It's not just one simple material. It's a very specific, carefully engineered mix.
Right.
60% calcium sulfate, that's KSO4 for the chemists listening.
Right.
And 40% hydroxyapatites, or K10PO460H2.
Okay, 60-40, that specific ratio sounds important.
Oh, it's absolutely fundamental. That 60-40 split isn't random at all. It dictates exactly how it works inside the body.
How so? What does that ratio actually do?
Well, to get why that ratio is so critical, we need to look at how it allows for what's called controlled sequential resorption.
Okay, sequential resorption, so it dissolves in stages.
Precisely. When CERAMENT is injected into a bone defect, that fast resorbing part, the calcium sulfate, it starts dissolving relatively quickly.
Right.
And this does a couple of really important things. One, it creates this calcium-rich environment, which kind of signals the body, hey, time to repair bone here.
Okay, like a trigger.
Yeah, a trigger. And importantly, it also opens up space. It creates these little channels and voids.
Yeah.
So the patient's own cells, growth factors, and crucially blood vessels can actually get into the area.
Got it. So the first part makes way for the body's repair crew.
Beautifully put.
Okay.
And as that calcium sulfate gradually disappears, the slower resorbing hydroxyapatite particles are left behind.
The other 40%.
The other 40%. And these are vital because they act as an osteoconductive scaffold.
Osteoconductive, meaning it guides bone growth.
Exactly. Think of it like a biocompatible framework, a structural blueprint, basically. New natural bone can then meticulously form and grow onto this framework.
I see. So one part dissolves fast to let things in, the other stays longer to build on.
You've got it. And the ultimate goal of this really finely tuned two-stage process is what we call synchronized healing.
Synchronized healing. Sounds elegant.
It is. It means the CERAMENT material is designed really carefully to resorb, to disappear at precisely the same rate that new, healthy, natural bone forms to replace it.
Wow. So it fades away just as the new bone takes over.
Exactly. It's this harmonious process. And typically, within about 6 to 12 months, the entire graft is completely remodeled. It just becomes integrated into the patient's own native bone.
So it's not just filling a hole.
Not at all. It's an elegant biological solution. The material doesn't just sit there. It actively guides, facilitates, and participates in the body's own healing cascade. The end result: a complete, healthy restoration of the bone structure.
So just playing devil's advocate, or maybe asking for the listener, why is this 60-40 mix, this synchronized resorption, why is that such a big deal? What's wrong with other grafts?
That's a great question. It really comes down to differentiation and ultimately better outcomes for the patient. If you look at other bone graft substitutes out there, they often have pretty significant drawbacks. For example, a pure calcium sulfate product, it might resorb way too quickly.
Disappears before the bone is ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It vanishes before the new bone has really had time to fully form, potentially leaving you with a void or some instability.
Not good.
Not good at all. Then, on the other hand, you have grafts made just of hydroxyapatite or other calcium phosphates.
The slower part of CERAMENT?
Right. But if it's only that, these materials can actually stick around on the body for years, sometimes even decades.
Wow.
And while they do provide a scaffold, they're super slow or sometimes incomplete. Resorption can actually get in the way. It can impede the body's ability to fully remodel the site back into natural living bone. You end up with a permanent foreign body left behind.
I see. So too fast is bad, too slow is also bad.
Precisely. And that's where the ingenuity of CERAMENT really lies. It strikes this ideal balance. It gives you that robust initial stability and the structural support that a healing bone desperately needs, kind of like a temporary internal cast, if you will. But then it systematically, gradually gives way to the natural bone forming underneath. It avoids those major drawbacks of the single component grafts.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like scaffolding for a building.
That's a perfect analogy. Think of it exactly like carefully designed architectural scaffolding.
Right.
It provides all the support needed while the building's going up, lets the core structure get strong, but instead of needing a crew to come and manually take it down, which could even damage the building, this smart scaffolding is engineered to just dissolve, disappear at exactly the right rate, just as the building itself becomes strong enough to stand completely on its own.
That's clever. Integrated, optimized.
Exactly. It really maximizes the body's own healing potential. It's a natural integrated process.
Okay, so we've really unpacked the science behind CERAMENT, which is fascinating. Now let's shift from the what's to the how. How does this technology actually translate into products used in surgery?
Right.
Because you mentioned Bonesupport has a portfolio addressing different needs.
They do. It's a smart sort of tiered offering. It starts with their foundational product, which is CERAMENT bone void filler, usually just called BVF.
BVF, okay.
And then they move into their more advanced drug-eluting versions. There's CERAMENT G, which has the antibiotic gentamicin mixed in.
Gentamicin, right.
And CERAMENT V, which is vancomycin instead.
Got it. BVF, G, and V. Addressing more complex needs as you go up the piers.
Exactly.
So let's start with the foundation. CERAMENT BVF. What's its main job?
Okay, so BVF, it's the cornerstone, really. Its purpose seems simple, but it's crucial. It's an injectable, it's radiopaque, meaning you can see it clearly on x-rays, which surgeons like, and it's osteoconductive, providing that scaffold we talked about. It's designed specifically for filling bone defects.
From injuries, disease?
Yeah, exactly. Defects resulting from injuries like fractures, or maybe diseases like bone tumors or cysts, or sometimes voids created after surgery.
Okay.
And what's really significant is how it's positioned. It's strategically presented as a superior synthetic alternative to what's long been called the gold standard in bone grafting.
Which is autograft, right?
Yeah.
Using the patient's own bone.
Exactly. Autograft.
So why is replacing autograft a benefit? I thought using your own bone was best.
Well, yes and no. To really get the patient benefit of BVF, you need to understand why autograft, despite being called the gold standard, can be, well, problematic.
Okay.
It is effective, no doubt, because it's the patient's own living tissue, so rejection isn't an issue. But it comes at a cost.
Which is?
Harvesting it requires a second surgical site.
Right. They have to cut somewhere else to get the bone.
Exactly. The surgeon has to make another incision, usually on the hip, the iliac crest, and take out some bone. And that second site isn't just an inconvenience. No, it brings a whole host of extra risks and issues. Patients often have significant pain at that donor site sometimes. Honestly, worse and longer lasting than the pain from the main surgery.
Wow. Okay.
Plus, you've got an increased risk of infection at that second site, more blood loss because you're operating in two places,
Yeah.
and it just makes the whole operation longer.
Right. Adds complexity and risk.
Totally. So CERAMENT BVF offers this safer, more consistent, readily available alternative. It just sidesteps all those extra burdens and surgical hassles for the patient.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So BVF is the baseline. Now, where does it get really game-changing? You mentioned CERAMENT G.
Ah, yes, CERAMENT G. This is where the technology, frankly, becomes a paradigm shift in certain areas of orthopedics.
Okay, why?
Because it incorporates the broad-spectrum antibiotic gentamicin. This isn't just a passive filler anymore. It has a first-in-class drug-eluting capability.
Drug-eluting, meaning it releases the antibiotic over time.
Exactly. It combines that osteoconductive CERAMENT scaffold with a potent antibiotic. So it has this powerful dual action capability.
Dual action.
Yeah, it simultaneously promotes the bone healing, provides that optimal scaffold we keep talking about.
Right.
And it actively prevents or treats infection by releasing gentamicin locally, right at the surgical site where you need it most.
Okay, healing bone and fighting infection at the same spot, same time. That sounds incredibly useful.
It is. And it represents this profound paradigm shift, especially in how we manage really complex conditions like chronic osteomyelitis.
Osteomyelitis, that's a serious bone infection, right? Hard to treat.
Very serious, very persistent, notoriously difficult to treat. Traditionally, managing it has been a really tough, multi-stage ordeal for patients.
Multi-stage, meaning multiple surgeries.
Often, yes. But CERAMENT G allows surgeons to potentially manage these really challenging infections in a single surgical procedure.
One surgery instead of multiple.
Yes. Think about the difference that makes for a patient. One operation versus maybe 2 or even 3 spread over months.
That's huge. Less time in hospital, less recovery time.
Absolutely. It's a monumental shift for patients. It dramatically improves their experience, and it fundamentally streamlines the whole surgical process for the medical team, too. It genuinely redefines the treatment pathway for these nasty bone infections.
Okay, you really need to spell out that contrast. What was the traditional way?
Right. To really appreciate the shift, let's look at that standard of care for chronic osteomyelitis. It was, and often still is where CERAMENT G isn't used, a truly arduous journey.
Okay.
It's a multi-stage protocol, often taking months. First, the surgeon has to go in and do an aggressive surgical debridement.
Meaning cleaning out all the infected stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meticulously removing all the infected, dead bone tissue. This leaves behind a significant hole, a dead space in the bone.
Right.
Then that void is temporarily filled with a non-resorbable antibiotic spacer. Usually it's PMMA beads, basically plastic beads mixed with antibiotics.
PMMA, okay. So plastic beads stay in there.
Temporarily, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Then the patient has to go on weeks, maybe months of systemic antibiotics pills or IV drugs that go through their whole body.
Mm.
And here's the kicker. A second major surgery is then required later on to take out those temporary PMMA beads.
Ah, you have to go back in just to remove them.
Yes. And only then, in that second surgery, can a permanent bone graft be implanted to finally reconstruct the bone defect.
Wow. That sounds grueling. Multiple surgeries, long antibiotic courses.
It is. Now compare that really laborious multi-stage process with the elegance of using CERAMENT G.
Okay.
The surgeon does the initial debridement, cleans out the infection, and then, in that same single procedure, they fill the void with CERAMENT G.
One step.
One step. The material immediately gets to work providing the scaffold for bone growth and releasing the gentamicin locally to handle the infection.
And because it resorbs.
Exactly. Because CERAMENT G is fully resorbable, it gradually disappears as the new bone forms. No second surgery needed to remove it.
That's a massive advantage.
Huge. And there's another critical difference. How the antibiotics are released. Those PMMA beads. They tend to give a big initial burst of drug release, but then the concentration levels often drop off quickly, sometimes falling below effective levels.
So the effect wears off.
Yeah, they might not maintain bacterial suppression over time, and often they don't even release all the antibiotic they contain. CERAMENT G, on the other hand, it's designed differently. It gives a robust initial burst, yes, but then it provides a sustained release.
Sustained how long?
It stays above what's called the minimum inhibitory concentration, or MIC, for at least 28 days.
MIC, that's the level needed to stop bacteria growing.
Precisely. It's the critical threshold. Maintaining the antibiotic concentration above the MIC locally, right where the infection is, for that extended period is crucial for actually eradicating the infection, preventing it from coming back, and also reducing the risk of developing antibiotic resistance.
Right, sustained local delivery is better than a quick burst that fades.
Much better. It's a significant clinical advantage and, frankly, a public health advantage too, given concerns about antibiotic resistance.
And they didn't stop at gentamicin, right? You mentioned CERAMENT V.
Correct. Bonesupport is strategically expanding its toolkit for infection management. CERAMENT V is a newer variant, and it incorporates vancomycin instead of gentamicin.
Vancomycin, I know that name. Isn't that used for tougher infections?
It is. It targets a different but equally critical range of bacteria, particularly gram-positive organisms. And crucially, this includes things like MRSA, methicillin-resistant, Staphylococcus aureus.
Ah, MRSA. That's a big problem in hospitals.
A huge concern. So having CERAMENT V gives surgeons another vital tool. They can tailor the treatment based on the specific bacteria they suspect or confirm are causing the infection. It really broadens the options.
So G for one type of bacteria, V for another.
Broadly speaking, yes. It expands the patient population who could benefit. Now, it's important for you listening to note, CERAMENT V is available in making a difference in Europe, but it's not yet approved for sale in the U.S. That's a key future growth opportunity we'll likely touch on again.
Got it. G is in the U.S., V is currently EU only. Now, thinking bigger picture, this single-stage approach must have implications for healthcare costs, right?
Oh, absolutely. From a wider perspective, especially for healthcare systems that are constantly grappling with rising costs and the pressure for efficiency, this technology offers a remarkably powerful health economic argument.
How so?
Well, enabling that single-stage procedure with CERAMENT G, it has the potential for really substantial cost savings across the board.
Fewer surgeries, presumably.
Exactly. You're directly reducing the number of operations per patient. That inherently lowers the risks of surgical complications. Fewer complications mean shorter hospital stays, fewer expensive readmissions.
Right.
And ultimately, it leads to a significant reduction in the total cost of care for these incredibly complex and often very long cases.
And that must appeal to hospitals and insurance companies.
Immensely. This economic benefit aligns perfectly with the big global shift towards value-based care and fixed reimbursement model systems, where hospitals get paid a set amount for a procedure regardless of how many complications arise.
So they're incentivized to use methods that work well the first time and avoid complications.
Precisely. They want the best outcomes at the lowest possible overall cost.
Is there any actual data on these savings?
Yes, there is. A U.S. health economic model did a detailed analysis and estimated potential average cost savings of around USD $27,943 per patient.
Wow. Nearly $28,000 per patient saved by using CERAMENT G compared to the old PMMA bead method.
That was the estimate from that specific model, yes. It's not just a small saving, it's a concrete, really impactful number that highlights the economic advantage.
Yeah.
For hospital administrators, for CFOs trying to manage budgets while delivering top care, that's a very compelling argument. It helps justify adopting what might seem like a premium price technology up front because the downstream savings are so significant, it makes it economically attractive.
Okay, so the tech is impressive, the economics look good. Let's talk about getting it to market. How has Bonesupport navigated the regulatory maze, especially in the U.S.? That seems crucial.
Crucial is an understatement. Their regulatory prowess, particularly in the U.S., is arguably a defining pillar of their entire success story. Let's focus on CERAMENT G for bone infection again. That key market authorization came in May 2022.
Right.
And importantly, it wasn't a standard approval. It was granted via the de novo classification process.
De novo. You mentioned that earlier. Remind us why that's significant.
Right. So a standard 510K clearance means a company shows its device is substantially equivalent to something already on the market, a predicate device.
Okay.
De novo is different. It's a pathway specifically for novel devices, things that are low to moderate risk but don't have legally marketed predicate. There's nothing quite like it already out there.
So the FDA is essentially saying this is new, we're creating a category for it.
Exactly. It immediately signaled the genuine innovation and uniqueness of CERAMENT G. It's often a longer, more data-intensive process than a 510(k).
And didn't it also get a special designation?
Yes, it received a breakthrough device designation. That's reserved for technologies offering more effective treatment for life-threatening or irreversibly debilitating conditions.
Like severe bone infections.
Precisely. And that designation helps speed things up. It allows for a more accelerated and collaborative review process with the FDA because they recognize the potential clinical importance.
So this de novo clearance wasn't just an approval, it was more than that.
Oh, it was absolutely a company-defining event, a strategic earthquake, really. Because by working with the FDA to establish an entirely new device classification, they got their own code, 21 CFR 88.3046. They didn't just get CERAMENT G cleared.
Yeah.
They essentially helped write the rule book for this entire category of devices, antibiotic-releasing bone void fillers.
Wow. So anyone else coming along now has to meet the standards Bonesupport helps set.
Exactly. Think about the competitive advantage that creates. Any future rival wanting to enter this specific space doesn't just need a good product. They need to follow the regulatory pathway and meet the standards that Bonesupport pioneered.
That's not just a moat. That's like digging a canyon around your castle.
It's a pretty deep canyon. Yes, it makes it incredibly difficult, expensive, and time-consuming for others to follow. It really cemented their first-mover advantage and shaped the future innovation in this niche.
And they didn't just stop there, right? They kept pushing for more approvals.
Absolutely relentless. They've strategically pursued further market expansion through more clearances. Big one. March 2024, CERAMENT G got an expanded 510(k) clearance for use in open fractures.
Open fractures, where the bone breaks through the skin. High infection risk there.
Extremely high infection risk. This move was huge because it reportedly more than doubled the addressable U.S. market for CERAMENT G. It pushed it right into the large critical trauma segment.
Okay, so expanding its use dramatically.
Dramatically. And then, almost immediately after, also in March 2024, CERAMENT BVF, the non-antibiotic version,
Right, the foundational work.
received 510(k) clearance for use in spinal interbody fusion procedures.
Spine surgery. That sounds like a massive market.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
This clearance provides the crucial regulatory green light for Bonesupport's planned entry into the U.S. spinal fusion market.
Right.
That's potentially their biggest opportunity yet. So yeah, these clearances aren't just ticking boxes. They represent a very calculated and successful expansion into major orthopedic areas.
Okay, regulatory approval is one thing, but getting hospitals to actually pay for new tech is another beast, right? How did they handle reimbursement?
Another critical piece of the puzzle, and again, they've been exceptionally strategic here. For CERAMENT G, they secured both a new technology add-on payment, or NTAP, for inpatient use,
Okay.
and a transitional pass-through payment, TPT, for outpatient procedures.
NTAP and TPT, what do those actually mean for a hospital?
Okay, so for you, the listener, understanding these is key. These are special programs run by CMS, Medicare, and Medicaid services. They provide extra reimbursement to hospitals on top of the standard payment, specifically for using new innovative technologies that significantly improve care but might be more expensive up front.
Ah, so it helps offset the higher cost of the new tech.
Exactly. It crucially reduces the financial risk for hospitals when they decide to adopt a novel, maybe premium-priced, technology like CERAMENT G. It directly speeds up adoption and encourages its use.
Makes sense. Takes away the it's too expensive argument, at least partially.
Significantly, yes. And they kept that momentum going. Just recently, in August 2025, CMS approved another NTAP for CERAMENT G, this time specifically for its use in those open fractures we just talked about.
Okay, so extra payment for trauma cases too.
Right. This provides up to an additional $5,687.50 per case for hospitals using CERAMENT G in trauma settings.
That's a serious incentive.
It's a powerful financial incentive. It directly encourages hospitals to build CERAMENT G into their standard protocols for managing open fractures, where infection is such a major threat. These reimbursement wins really show how they're systematically tackling both the clinical and the financial barriers to getting this technology widely adopted.
Okay, let's zoom out again. We've talked tech, regulation, reimbursement. What about the big picture market trends? What forces are helping Bonesupport?
Right, the macro context. It's hugely important. The global orthobiologics market itself is massive. Estimates range from, say, USD 6.8 billion to maybe 9.2 billion just in 2023-24.
Wow.
And it's growing steadily. Projections suggest a solid 5–6% compound annual growth rate, meaning it could reach somewhere between USD 11 and 14 billion by the early 2030s.
That's significant growth. And where's the action geographically?
Crucially for bone support strategy, North America accounts for nearly half of all those sales.
Okay, so their heavy U.S. focus makes perfect sense. What's driving that overall market growth?
Several key factors. First, you have the undeniable global trend of aging populations. We're looking at maybe 1.6 billion people over 65 by 2050.
More older people means more bone issues.
Generally, yes. A higher incidence of degenerative bone diseases, osteoporosis leading to fragility fractures, other age-related orthopedic problems needing solutions.
Okay, demographics. What else?
Second, we're seeing, unfortunately, an increasing prevalence of trauma and sports injuries across all age groups. That drives consistent demand for advanced bone repair products, especially for complex stuff like those open fractures, CERAMENT G targets.
Right.
But here's where a really fundamental shift in clinical practice comes in, and this is key for bone support. There's a major accelerating trend away from traditional grafts like autograft and allograft and towards synthetic substitutes.
We touched on the problems with autograft at the second surgery site, pain.
Exactly. And allograft, using bone from cadaver donors, also has its issues. Potential disease transmission risk, however small, immune reactions, variability in quality.
Okay, so doctors prefer synthetics now.
The preference is strongly shifting that way. Synthetics offer consistent safety profiles, predictable performance, and they're readily available off the shelf. No need to harvest from the patient or rely on donor banks. This synthetic segment is actually the fastest growing part of the whole orthobiologics market.
Interesting. Any other big clinical trends?
Yes, one more huge one. The pervasive move towards minimally invasive surgery, or MIS.
Smaller cuts, faster recovery.
Exactly. Less pain, quicker return to function. It's happening across almost all surgical fields. And materials like CERAMENT, because they're injectable and flowable, are perfectly suited for these less invasive techniques. You can deliver the graft through smaller openings.
Okay, so aging population, more trauma, shift to synthetics, rise of MIS. Bone support seems well placed.
Extremely well placed. If you connect all those dots, CERAMENT sits right at the intersection of these powerful trends. It's synthetic, fitting that big shift. It's injectable, perfect for MIS. And its antibiotic versions offer novel solutions for trauma and infection problems, amplified by aging and injury rates.
So they benefit from the whole market growing.
Yes, and they're actively capturing share from older, less effective, or less convenient technologies. It's like having a double tailwind behind them. It really underscores the strength of their strategic positioning.
Okay, but they're not alone in this market. You mentioned the giants earlier. Let's talk competition. Who are they up against?
Right. This is definitely not an empty field. It's dominated by some true heavyweights.
Yeah.
You've got Medtronic, Stryker, Zimmer Biomet, Dupuis Synthes, which is part of J&J. These are the titans of orthopedics.
And their advantages are?
Immense scale, for one. Global distribution networks that reach practically everywhere, huge diverse product portfolios covering almost everything in orthopedics, and really importantly, deep, long-standing relationships with hospitals and surgeons built over decades.
And they have their own bone graft products too, right?
Oh, yes. They all offer a range of allografts, DBMs, which is demineralized bone matrix, and their own synthetic options. Think of Medtronic's Infuse-C, which is a big name, or Stryker's Vito's, Zimmer Biomet's Triosite, or Genex products. They're formidable competitors with established products.
So how does a smaller company like Bonesupport even compete?
That's where their strategy's so smart. They don't try to fight the giants on every single front. They operate as a highly specialized, pure-play competitor.
Pure play meaning just focused on this area.
Exactly. Their genius is focusing intensely on their clear technological advantage, that CERAMENT platform within specific clinical niches where it really shines.
Like the antibiotic delivery.
Precisely. Especially local antibiotic delivery for infection and trauma. They avoid getting drawn into broad, resource-draining battles across every product category. Instead, they aim to dominate where they are truly different and offer superior value. It's a focused strategy that maximizes their impact.
And that niche is protected, you said, by barriers to entry.
Yes, and these barriers are formidable, making it really tough for others to just copy what they're doing.
Like the regulatory hurdles.
Huge ones. Getting novel devices approved in the U.S., especially via de novo, or the even more complex PMA pathway, is incredibly long, complicated, and expensive. We're talking tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, and years of clinical trials.
Okay, regulation. What else?
Clinical evidence. Surgeons are rightly conservative. They won't change how they operate without really strong data, often demanding level 1 randomized controlled trials, the gold standard of evidence. Generating that takes massive investment in time, money, and scientific rigor.
Great. Prove it works and works better.
Exactly. And finally, there's the challenge of distribution and market access. Building a sales force, getting your product approved for use in hospitals, gaining contracts. You're doing this against incumbents who have massive leverage because of their broad portfolios and existing relationships. It's a huge uphill battle.
So how has Bonesupport built its moat? They seem to have overcome these barriers.
They have. And that's the key to their competitive advantage now. They have, through really smart strategy and execution, already navigated these huge barriers, especially in the crucial U.S. market.
So their past success is the barrier for others now.
In large part, yes. Their proven track record in getting those groundbreaking regulatory approvals, generating that mountain of clinical data, and painstakingly building their direct distribution network, these now act as their primary defense.
What about patents? Do they have strong IP?
They do. A comprehensive portfolio, around 100 registered or pending patents globally. And it's not just one patent, it's a layered defense.
Layered, meaning?
Meaning it covers different aspects, the unique material composition itself, that specific 60-40 calcium sulfate hydroxyapatite mix, including heat treatment aspects, but also critical parts of the delivery system, like their special mixing and injection syringe.
So protecting the what and the how.
Exactly. For instance, they have a key U.S. patent, number 10,994,998, patented in May 2021, that specifically protects the core tech well into the 2030s, giving them a long period of exclusivity.
Okay, IP is one layer. What about that clinical evidence you mentioned? How strong is it?
It's extensive and powerful. It's another major differentiator and barrier. They have over 350 publications and abstracts supporting CERAMENT.
Wow, 350. Any highlights?
Definitely. The Certified study is a big one. It was a level 1 randomized controlled trial, top-tier evidence. It showed CERAMENT BVF was non-inferior to autograft for treating complex tibial plateau fractures.
Non-inferior to the gold standard.
Yes, but crucially, patients who got CERAMENT had significantly less post-op pain and less blood loss. That's a direct patient benefit, translating to better recovery.
Okay, that's compelling. Anything more recent?
Yeah, the Celerio study, results came out September 2024. It suggested something really interesting, that you might be able to use shorter courses of systemic antibiotics if you're also using a local antibiotic-eluting graft like CERAMENT G.
Potentially reducing overall antibiotic use.
Exactly, which could help fight antibiotic resistance and lower costs. That's a big deal. Yeah. And maybe the most dramatic finding came from a diabetic foot infection study published January 2025.
Diabetic foot infections, those can be devastating.
Horrible outcomes often. This study reported a massive improvement in the 5-year survival rate for patients treated with CERAMENT G or V.
How much improvement?
The survival rate jumped from about 45% in the standard treatment group to an incredible 87.5% for those getting CERAMENT.
87.5% versus 45%. That's life-saving.
It's an absolutely stunning result. It powerfully underscores the transformative clinical benefit in these incredibly high-risk patients. Data like that is hard for competitors to argue with.
Okay, strong IP, compelling clinical data.
Yeah.
What about getting it to surgeons? That distribution challenge.
Right. And here they made a really bold, pivotal move back in May 2018. They terminated their exclusive U.S. distribution deal with Zimmer Biomet.
Ending a deal with a giant like Zimmer sounds risky.
It was a gamble at the time, could have caused disruption, but it was crucial. It allowed Bonesupport to take direct control of their own commercial destiny in their most important market.
So they went direct in the U.S.
They built a hybrid model. They have their own core sales management team, but they partner with a large network of independent distributors.
Independent distributors?
Yeah, about 25 different distributor groups, employing over 500 experienced sales reps who already have deep relationships with orthopedic surgeons across the country.
Leveraging existing relationships. Smart.
Very smart. It gives them broad reach, but in a more cost-effective way than building a massive direct sales force from scratch.
Any other distribution partnerships?
Yes, another clever one in 2022. They signed a distribution deal with orthopedics.
Focusing on kids.
Exactly. Orthopedics has a specialized sales force calling on children's hospitals across the U.S., over 250 of them. This deal lets Bonesupport use that existing network to promote CERAMENT BVF in the pediatric market.
Again, capital-efficient expansion into a niche.
Precisely. It would have been very difficult and expensive for Bonesupport to build that pediatric reach themselves.
So what's the result of all this? Are they actually gaining market share?
They are. While still relatively small compared to the giants overall, they're achieving rapid and impressive share gains in their specific target areas.
Like where?
In the U.S. extremities market for CERAMENT G, for instance, Forecasts suggest their share could grow from around 5.6% in 2024 to nearly 15% by 2027.
Doubling or tripling share in a few years.
Looks like it. And in Europe, where they've been direct for longer in some markets, they already hold about an 8% share of the local antibiotic segment. These numbers clearly show they are successfully taking business away from established players, driven by their product and their strategy.
Okay, this leads us perfectly into the financial story. You've painted a picture of strategic success, but how does that look on the bottom line? You mentioned a hockey stick growth curve.
It really is a dramatic transformation financially. This company went from being primarily R&D focused, burning cash on development and approvals, to becoming a high-growth commercial machine.
Show us the numbers.
Look at net sales. Back in 2018, they were at about SEK 97 million Swedish krona. By 2024, that had surged to nearly SEK 900 million.
Wow, almost a 10-fold increase in 6 years.
It works out to a 45% compound annual growth rate over those 6 years. That's exceptional growth.
And it accelerated recently, you said, after the FDA approvals.
Dramatically. Look at the annual growth rates, 54.5% in 2022, then a staggering 79.8% in 2023.
Nearly 80% growth in 1 year.
Incredible. And then still a very strong 52% growth in 2024.
And this was driven by the U.S.
Overwhelmingly. That strategic decision to go direct in the U.S. paid off massively. U.S. sales grew 104% in 2023, another 63% in 2024. The U.S. now makes up about 3/4 of their total sales.
Vindicating that risky move to end the Zimmer deal.
Absolutely. And drilling down further, it's the antibiotic products, G&V, that are the real engine here. Their sales grew 219% in 2023.
219% compared to BVF.
BVF grew too, but a much more modest 6% that year. It clearly shows the market appetite for their unique infection management solutions.
Okay, explosive revenue growth. What about profits? Are they making money yet?
Yes, and this is the other crucial part of the financial story. The profitability inflection point. First off, a key characteristic. Bonesupport has exceptionally high and stable gross margins.
Gross margin, meaning revenue minus the direct cost of making the product.
Exactly. And their gross margin reached an incredible 92.6% in 2024.
Over 92%. That's
Yeah.
really high for med tech, isn't it?
It's outstanding. In this industry, margins like that scream proprietary, high-value product with strong IP protection and pricing power.
Okay, high gross margins. How does that connect to overall profit?
It creates powerful operating leverage. When you have that rapid revenue growth hitting such high gross margins, a much larger chunk of each extra sales dollar falls down to operating profit. Your fixed costs like R&D, admin don't scale up nearly as fast as sales.
So more sales equals much more profit proportionally.
Exactly. And after years of operating losses, which is normal for a med tech company investing heavily in R&D and building out commercial infrastructure.
Right, burning cash to build the foundation.
They hit a critical turning point. In 2023, they reported their first ever full-year operating profit, SEK 13.9 million.
That's a big milestone. From losing money to making money?
A huge turnaround. They lost SEK 64.5 million the year before. And the momentum accelerated operating profits surged to SEK 166 million in 2024.
Wow. So the business model is proving highly scalable.
Absolutely. Revenues are now growing much faster than operating expenses, showing they've reached a level of commercial maturity and efficiency.
And this profitability doesn't mean they can fund their own growth now? Or do they still need to raise cash?
That's another key positive indicator. They are increasingly able to self-fund their growth.
How so?
Well, any fast-growing company needs more working capital, more money tied up in inventory, and waiting for customer payments. But Bonesupport's cash flow from operations turned positive in late 2023.
Generating cash instead of burning it?
Exactly. And that continued strongly. Into 2025, they generated SEK 50 million in operating cash flow in Q2 2025 alone. They had a solid cash balance of over SEK 300 million at the end of that quarter.
So they have cash in the bank and are generating more.
Right. It means they can largely fund their current plans more, U.S. expansion, pipeline work, without needing to rush out and raise more money through debt or selling shares immediately.
What about R&D spending? Are they cutting back to boost profits?
Not cutting back in absolute terms, but it shows a strategic shift. Their actual R&D spending in krona has been fairly stable. But as a percentage of their rocketing sales, it's naturally come down from over 16% in 2022 to under 10% in 2023.
So they're still investing, but sales are growing faster.
Precisely. It reflects that pivot from more commercial execution, post-market studies to support wider use of existing products, and strategic pipeline development rather than pure discovery.
They did have to raise money in the past, though, right?
Oh, yes. Absolutely necessary steps. They had their IPO back in 2017. And then a really critical share issue in May 2020 raised SEK $378 million.
And that money was for?
Explicitly earmarked for building out the U.S. commercial operation and getting those crucial FDA approvals. This was dilutive for existing shareholders at the time, yes, but it was the key that unlocked this whole phase of explosive growth we're seeing now.
Makes sense. Investment needed to fuel the fire. And management seems credible, delivering on promises.
They have a strong track record recently, consistently meeting and often beating their financial guidance, like exceeding that over 50% sales growth guidance for 2024.
Okay.
Plus, you see good alignment with shareholders, significant insider ownership. The outgoing CEO held a lot of shares. The incoming CEO put in nearly SEK $4 million of his own money. And they have long-term incentive plans tying executive pay to company performance. These are generally positive signs.
Okay, so strong financials, profitability achieved, self-funding growth. What's next? What's the future growth strategy?
It's clearly defined and multi-pronged. First and foremost, keep pushing hard in the U.S. extremities market.
Double down where they're already succeeding.
Exactly. Leverage those dual indications, bone infection and open fractures. Keep adding new surgeons. Get existing surgeons to use it more often. Get it approved for use in more hospitals. That's priority number one.
Makes sense. What's the next big thing?
The single biggest new growth driver is that planned launch into the U.S. spine market.
Right, the BVF clearance for spinal fusion. When's that happening?
They're targeting a commercial launch for December 2025. And the opportunity is just massive. Spine surgery is the largest use case for bone graft substitutes globally, nearly half the total market. We're talking maybe 750,000 procedures a year in the U.S. alone.
Huge potential. Capture even a small slice.
And it would be transformational for Bonesupport's revenue. But, and it's a big but, this comes with significant execution risk.
Why is that?
Spine is incredibly competitive. You've got deeply entrenched players like Medtronic with iNFuse, who have dominated for years and have very strong surgeon loyalty.
Hard to break in.
Very hard. Bonesupport's strategy involved setting up a whole separate network of specialized spine distributors, different from their extremities team. And crucially, they know they need to generate compelling clinical data quickly within 12 months of launch to show surgeons why they should switch, especially since they're launching with BVF first, not the antibiotic version.
Okay, U.S. extremities, U.S. spine. Anywhere else?
Longer term, they're looking at developing Asian markets. They've already started the regulatory process in Japan, which signals those global ambitions beyond the U.S. and Europe.
Okay, that covers geographic expansion. What about new products? Anything exciting in the pipeline?
Yes, definitely. The most immediate opportunity is getting CERAMENT V launched in the U.S.
The vancomycin version, when could that happen?
They submitted the 510K application in Q1 2025. So a potential launch could be in the first half of 2026 if all goes smoothly.
And that would be significant because...
Because vancomycin targets those tough gram-positive bacteria, including MRSA. Having both G and V available in the U.S. would give surgeons a much broader toolkit for tackling different types of infections, significantly expanding their addressable market for infection management.
Okay, CERAMENT V is near term. Anything further out? Next generation stuff?
Yes, their preclinical pipeline is looking at next-generation combination products. They're exploring adding osteoinductive properties to CERAMENT.
Osteoinductive, meaning actually stimulating new bone growth, not just providing a scaffold.
Exactly, actively signaling bone formation. They're looking at combining CERAMENT in-house with things like bisphosphonates, drugs used for osteoporosis, which could target osteoporotic fractures.
Osteoporosis, that's a gigantic market.
Huge. They're also exploring combinations with DBM, demineralized bone matrix, and for really powerful growth factors like BMPs, bone morphogenic proteins. They see that more as something to develop potentially with a strategic partner.
But that osteoporosis angle, if they could develop an effective injectable product for fragility fractures.
That would be the aha moment, wouldn't it? Given the aging population, an effective local treatment for osteoporotic fractures could open up a vast new market. It could fundamentally change how we treat a disease affecting millions. That's the longer-term vision.
Okay, ambitious plans. Now, there's a leadership change happening too, right? A new CEO.
That's correct. Emil Bilbach, the CEO who's overseen this incredible transformation since 2018, is moving into a senior advisor role.
Staying involved, then?
Yes, which suggests a smooth transition. Taking over as CEO from September 1st, 2025 is Torbjørn Skuld. He comes with extensive experience in medtech and specifically orthopedics.
So an experienced hand. Any risks with the change?
Well, the transition seems very well managed. Bilbeck advising, Skuld investing his own money shows confidence, but still, any leadership change during such a period of intense growth and critical product launches always introduces some element of execution risk. The new team needs to maintain momentum and successfully navigate these big strategic initiatives, especially the spine launch.
Okay, makes sense. So great potential, clear strategy, but what are the potential roadblocks? What are the key challenges or risks Bonesupport faces?
Right, it's not all smooth sailing. There are definitely challenges. One is just general healthcare procedure volumes.
Yeah.
While the U.S. has mostly recovered post-pandemic,
Yeah.
some European markets are still a bit sluggish. Staffing shortages in hospitals, things like that, can slow down elective surgeries, which impacts demand.
Okay, procedure volumes. What about competition?
Always a threat. Those big players aren't standing still. They're constantly launching new synthetic grafts too.
Yeah.
Maybe not antibiotic-eluting like CERAMENT G, but products like Orthofix's OsteoCove or Anika's Tactoset can still compete effectively for standard bone void filling, maybe on price or existing contracts.
So constant pressure from the giant.
Constant pressure. Then you have macroeconomic factors.
Liked.
Foreign exchange risk is a big one for them. They're a Swedish company reporting krona, but get most of their revenue in U.S. dollars.
So if the krona gets stronger against the dollar.
Their reported revenue and profit in krona effectively shrinks, even if U.S. sales are strong in dollar terms. We saw that impact them in Q1 2025. It's a headwind they have to manage.
Any other macro risks?
Well, there's always background noise about potential future trade issues, like U.S. import tariffs on European goods. It's speculative, but something any global company has to consider, as it could impact costs or pricing down the line.
Okay. What about regulatory or reimbursement risks going forward?
Always present in this industry. Getting CERAMENT V approved in the U.S. isn't guaranteed. Delays can happen. And those super helpful NTAP and TPT payments, they're temporary programs.
Oh, they don't last forever.
No. Long-term success depends on getting CERAMENT integrated into the standard payment systems, proving its long-term value convincingly, so hospitals continue using it even without the bonus payments.
Got it. Any other risks? Clinical liability.
Inherent risks with any implanted medical device. Product liability is always a factor. And while CERAMENT has a strong safety record, you do occasionally see reports. There was an FDA MOD database report back in February 2025 mentioning a patient death where synthetic bone graft embolization involving CERAMENT BVF was cited as a potential cause.
That sounds serious.
It does. Now, it appears isolated and could well be related to using it off-label or perhaps surgical technique. These things are complex, but it highlights that risk. Even investigating such events thoroughly takes time and resources, regardless of the outcome.
Right. And you mentioned the spine market entry risk specifically.
Yes, that deserves highlighting again. It is arguably their single biggest execution risk right now. It's the most competitive space full of giants with deep loyalties, and they're leading with BVF, which is less differentiated than their antibiotic products. Failure to get traction there would really impact their long-term growth story.
Okay. And finally, just the risks of scaling up.
It's exactly. Managing that rapidly growing U.S. commercial network is complex, and they rely on third-party contract manufacturers for production. That introduces potential vulnerabilities, supply chain disruptions, ensuring manufacturing capacity keeps up with demand, quality control. All require very diligent management as they grow.
Expert. Wow. What an incredible journey we've taken through Bonesupport, a company that really seems to embody innovation in orthobiologics.
That's quite a story.
From that really unique, elegant science behind the biphasic CERAMENT technology, its powerful antibiotic-eluting versions, to those savvy regulatory wins where they basically help write the rules, and then that absolutely remarkable hockey stick financial growth, it's clear they are making a significant transformative mark.
Absolutely. And hopefully you listening now have a really deep, nuanced understanding of not just what Bonesupport does, but crucially, why it matters.
Yeah.
You've heard how their single-stage solutions are changing patient care for really tough conditions, how they impact healthcare economics, how they navigate a tough market with smart IP and strong data.
Right.
This deep dive has hopefully given you real insights into the complex world of medtech development, the regulatory hurdles, the market strategies, insights valuable for anyone curious about where health technology is heading.
Definitely. And looking beyond the tech, beyond the financials, this whole discussion, it raises a really interesting question, I think, for you to ponder. If we're now at a point where we can essentially guide the body to rebuild bone from within, using these intelligent materials that can even deliver medicine precisely where needed, what does that mean for how we even define healing?
That's a deep thought.
Are we moving towards a future where our own biology is seamlessly integrated with these kinds of biointelligent engineered materials, where the lines between what's natural and what's augmented start to blur? And how might that fundamentally change our whole experience of health, of recovery, maybe even our physical capabilities? Something to think about until our next deep dive.